let us prepare ourselves. If you put your hand over your eyes, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. And now over your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. And now hand over your heart and just extend out your arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that we live in a divinely ordered universe. We live in a divinely ordered universe. There is no chaos outside of what we human beings create in our life. You know, even Great Mother, when Great Mother has an earthquake, it's time to rebalance the planet. It's done with purpose. When there's a fire that's not set by arson, it's Great Mother is replanting the universe. She's bringing it into balance on this planet. See, it's not that when any of these tragedies happen, like an earthquake or a wildfire, that it doesn't create great upheaval and chaos for Great Mother's citizens. But what we want to remember is that those citizens that are in those areas are living in an area that sometimes creates upheaval in order for balance to happen. So when we ask the question, how could a God of love allow this to happen, we know the answer. The answer is, it's time for rebalancing. The answer is, we live in a divinely ordered universe, and it was reordering itself at that time. Now, there are some of us, myself included, feel like occasionally we have earthquakes and wildfires and massive floods in our own lives. And when we ask that question of ourselves, what is happening here? How can a God of love allow this earthquake to happen in my life? How could the flood come in my life? We know the answer is we are needing to rebalance and reorder our lives in a divinely ordered universe. We're living outside of the divine order, in other words. It's time for us to get back in and reset in the divine order of this universe. There are some of us who have lost houses because we got involved in loans that were happening that either we didn't make it our business to understand, or for some other reason, those loans weren't good for us, and we created chaos in our lives by losing our homes because we were living outside of a divinely ordered universe. This is a hard thing to say. But sometimes the messages have to be hard. You've heard me say before, sometimes it's the preacher's job to comfort the afflicted, and sometimes to afflict the comforted. And sometimes maybe this message is one of those little times in our, so don't hurt the messenger, okay? But I know there are some of my friends who have, on the way down the marriage aisle, they've been saying the words, I don't. I don't. I don't. I don't. And they get right up there and put a big smile on their face and say, I do. And what happens at the end of that time is they've created chaos in their lives. See, there are some of us who have tried to pretend to be a different sexual preference than we were. We knew we were living a lie. We knew that. Yet we tried the best we could. What happened is, however, we created chaos in our personal lives with those people we were involved in, didn't we? We just created a big mess. Why? Because we were living outside of the natural order of the universe in our lives. You know, in our lives, until we begin to trust that still small voice that says, I know differently than what I'm doing now, I know better than what I'm doing now, until we begin to look at the light that we are. The great Buddha says, we are a lamp unto ourselves. Until we get to the place where we can begin to trust that lamp unto ourselves, we're going to create chaos in our lives because we're going to be living outside of what God created, which is a divinely ordered universe for ourselves. Now, we can use the chaos in our lives in two ways. We can use it to blame other people for the chaos. We can blame our parents. We can blame society. We can blame God. We can blame anybody we can get our hands on. That's one way to do it. But the truth is, as we say this almost every week, blaming is a waste of time. Turn to a neighbor and say, blaming's really a waste of time. So we can use one way. Okay, all right, good. We can use one way, and that's blaming, or we can do the other way, and that's learn from the chaos. We can learn from the chaos in our lives. So how do we learn? How do we learn from the chaos? Well, one way is we can become familiar with the 55th Psalm and line 22 in the 55th Psalm, which says, "Give me your worries, and I will sustain you." Another way to say it is, give your burdens unto the Lord, and he will sustain you. Give your burdens unto the Lord, and he will sustain you. How we would say that in religious science is this: give your burdens unto spiritual principles and look at them, and those principles will sustain you. Now, the original definition of sustain is to lift me up and to guide me. That's what Spirit does. Lift me up and guide me. If we can begin to really work with that concept, not just hear it and move on, but really begin to work with what does it mean to have the presence of God within us lift us up and sustain us. Well, in order to help us with this, I have taken the word sustain, and I want to talk a little bit about each letter. The only reason, there's no spiritual significance at all for me doing this. The only reason that I'm doing this is because it just helps me organize my thoughts. But the whole purpose of this talk is for us to begin to understand that if we can understand line 22 of the 55th Psalm, which is, I give my worries unto the Lord, and he sustains me. I give my worries unto God, unto Allah, unto Elohim, into the sacred grandmother tree. I give my worries unto that, into the universe, into divine intelligence. I give my worries there, and it lifts me up and guides me as to my next step. If we can really begin to get that, we will move ourselves so much closer to why you came here today, which is simply to have a closer walk with God. That's the only reason to come to church, is to have a closer walk with the presence. And so much of the different ways we do church here, through the prayer, through Richard's beautiful sacred reading, through the choir's awesome music. So many ways, as well as I hope the message. Well, the first letter in the word sustain is S, surrender. In order to be able to have lifted up and guided, we have to surrender. Now, by surrender, I don't mean giving up. I mean giving in. I mean giving over to a power that is greater than you are and that you can use. That's what our founder, Ernest Holmes, teaches us. There is a power greater than we are that we can use. And what I wish he had said is, not only is there a power greater than we are that we can use, but who also can use us, because we are powerful vehicles for love, for healing on the planet. You know, we get so congested. We get so congested in our chaos. We indulge in our fear. We amp up our anxiety. We collect our posse to help us get on that wheel, that hamster wheel that just goes around and around, and we keep repeating. Haven't you done that? You've had chaos, and you just talk about it until your chops are going to fall right off. Don't you just keep talking and talking and talking and reliving it and reliving it? We haven't surrendered when we do that. We get so congested in our negative thinking that Spirit can't move through us, can't bring us the joy, can't lift us up and guide us forward. I want to ask you to listen to some 30 seconds of flute music, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but I want you to just listen to this. Billy? Now, the reason we were able to experience the beauty, and wasn't that beautiful? The reason we were able to experience the beauty is because the air chamber of the flute was open. It wasn't stopped up. It wasn't stuffed with anything. See, God can't blow that beautiful music through a stopped up air chamber. And God can't blow your beautiful music if you are stopped up, if you're congested by the chaos that's inside of you. You know, if we have trouble surrendering to God, just giving it over to God, there's only one reason that I believe that anybody has trouble surrendering their worries over to the Lord. And the reason I think we have trouble surrendering our worries onto God and just giving it away to God is because we have an outdated definition of who God is. Nobody wants to surrender anything, any power, any control, anything over to a sometimey God. A God that was like a lot of our parents. We didn't know when they came home what the kind of mood they were going to be in. Were they nice? Were they happy? Were they mad? Were they punishing? Were they wrathful? We didn't know that. And sometimes we've attributed that to God. And so we don't, who in their right mind would give over their troubles to a wrathful God, a punishing God? Nobody. But in this church, we learn we don't have that kind of God. That kind of God doesn't exist for anybody, really. We have a compassionate God. Who doesn't want to give their worries over to compassionate God? Who doesn't want to give their worries over to a loving God? Who doesn't want to give their worries over to a harmonious God? When we get stuck in surrendering, I think we need to look at who God is for us. The next one is you, S-U. You is unburden. Unburden yourself of blaming other people, of guilt and shame. Sometimes people ask me, well, how can I do that? How can I stop blaming somebody when they have trespassed against me so much? And I'm here to tell you, it's not easy, but it can be done. I have been trespassed in one of the most worst ways a mother could ever be trespassed against. And it took me years, but I finally got it. And it was actually reflected, the behavior, here's how it is, here's how you do it. You make a decision that you're going to stop blaming anybody else. You make that with your head. I'm going to stop blaming anybody else. And then you make sure that every behavior that you have, every action that you take after you make that decision is congruent with that decision. Now notice I didn't say thought, because sometimes your thoughts are just going to go back. Oh, that son of a bada. That's going to happen. Pat yourself on the head and say, oh, it's okay. It's all right. Don't worry about that. But your behaviors have to reflect the decision you made. There's a wonderful Hindu story about a master who lived in a small forest, and he had just a hut. And in the hut, his only possessions were 2 candlesticks, some candles, a prayer mat, and his eating bowl, his begging bowl. And one day he left his hut and he went out into the forest to collect some berries. And while he was gone, a bandit came and stole all of his possessions. And when he got back, his disciples came to him and said, Master, someone has come and stolen all of your possessions. Let's go and we can catch him. It hasn't been very long. We can probably catch him. And the master bowed to his disciples and went into his hut and began to meditate. And the disciples looked at each other and said, well, Jesus, didn't he hear us? So they ran in after a few minutes, and they said, Master, I don't think you heard us. You've been robbed. If we go now, we can catch the bandit. Probably. And he looked at him and he said this. He said, you're right. They stole my candlesticks, my candles, my prayer mat, and my bowl. All that I had, they stole. In 6 months, I won't even remember this day. So why don't I just start now? Isn't that beautiful? Why don't I just start now? Why don't we just start now, you and I? Why don't we just start now forgiving ourselves? Why don't we just start now forgiving other people? So that the harmony that is available to us can get actually in. The love that is wanting to come our way can actually get in. Unburden ourselves. The next one is C. S stands for C. S-U-S stands for C. We want to see with spiritual eyes that which is not here yet, that which you want to see made manifest yet. You see that first with spiritual eyes, with hope and confidence. You know who sees that the best? Children often see that the best. I want to read you a story. Some of you may have heard it before. I've read it, I think it's been a couple of years ago. It's a story that comes to us by Jack Canfield. I have a friend named Monty Roberts who owns a horse ranch in San Ysidro. He has let me use this house to put on fundraising events to raise money for youth at-risk programs. The last time I was there, he introduced me by saying, I want to tell you why I let Jack use my house. It all goes back to a story about a young man who was the son of an itinerant horse trainer who would go from stable to stable, racetrack to racetrack, farm to farm, and ranch to ranch, training horses. As a result, the boy's high school career was continually interrupted. When he was a senior, he was asked to write a paper about what he wanted to be and do when he grew up. That night, he wrote a 7-page paper describing his goal of someday owning a horse ranch. He wrote about his dream in great detail and even drew a diagram of a 200-acre ranch, showing the location of all the buildings, the stables, and the track. Then he drew a detailed floor plan of a 4,000-square-foot house that would sit on a 200-acre dream ranch. He put a great deal of his heart into this project, and the next day he handed it in to his teacher. 2 days later, he received his paper back. On the front page was a large red F, a note that read, "See me after class." The boy with the dream went to see the teacher after class and asked, "Why did I receive an F?" The teacher said, "This is an unrealistic dream for a boy like you. You have no money. You came from an itinerant family. You have no resources. Owning a ranch requires a lot of money. You have to buy the land. You have to pay for the original breeding stock. And later, you'll have to pay large stud fees. There's no way you could ever do it." Then the teacher added, "If you will rewrite this paper with a more realistic goal, I will reconsider your grade." The boy went home and thought about it long and hard. He asked his father what he should do. His father said, "Look, son, you have to make up your own mind on this. However, I think it is a very important decision for you." After sitting with it for a week, the boy turned in the same paper, making no changes at all. He stated, "You can keep the F, and I'll keep my dream." Monty then turned to the assembled group and said, "I tell you this story because you are sitting in my 4,000-square-foot house in the middle of my 200-acre horse ranch. And I still have that paper framed hanging over my fireplace." When we can begin to see that which is not there, even in the face of those people who are skeptical in our lives, we move ourselves so much closer to allowing ourselves to be sustained in this life. You know, are you ready to have the promise of sustaining? Are you ready to really see and see clearly, for instance, every Jewish person, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Wiccan, every Hindu, every person sitting down, not just the leaders, but every one of them sitting down in brotherhood without prejudice? Are we really ready to see that in our mind? Are you ready to see someone say Black Lives Matter without someone else coming up and trying to minimize that statement or deflect that statement? Are we really ready to see that? Are we ready to see every marriage happy and beautiful and passionate and compassionate and respectful? Are we ready to see that? When we're ready to see those things and see them until we can believe them, we will begin to know what it means to be sustained by Spirit. A is for activation. So now we have to activate our life. We've surrendered, we've unburdened, we've done treatment, we've prayed. Oh no, we haven't done treatment. T is for treatment, I'm sorry. T is for treatment. That's our way of prayer. Now look, everybody thinks that religious scientists only do spiritual mind treatment. Practitioners, please stand. Okay, I can tell you every one of these people are fabulous spiritual mind treatment people. And I can equally tell you with some assurance that every single one of these people play a broad way of praying in addition to spiritual mind treatment. Please be seated. It's important for us to know that we're all able to pray. So I'm going to teach you how to do spiritual mind treatment right now. You take your vision, you take what you see, and you hand it over to Spirit. That's what you do. You take your dream, you take your spirit, and you hand it over to the universe. And you say, okay, now it's yours. You go ahead and fix it up. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. So everybody can begin to do spiritual mind treatment. A is for activation. Okay, now we've surrendered, we've unburdened, we've seen new ways of being, we've prayed, and now we take action. We take action. See, so often when we're mixed into chaos in our life for a long period of time, we start getting and you've all met him. Some of us have been. I've been it sometimes. When you in chaos for a while, you kind of walk bent over. You kind of minimize yourself instead of walking. I'm ready for joy. That's how we need to begin to walk in our life. Joy and hope. In this step, we practice giving, and I'm not talking about giving money for once. I'm not talking about giving money. Okay, I'm talking about giving what is inside of you. I'm talking about giving a smile. If you need, if you look just today, if you went out of the church and you went to the grocery store, or you went to have brunch, or went to do the laundry, or went to wherever you go next, look around. See how many people could use a smile. Those other people who don't come to the funny little church in West Sacramento, they're still walking all lumped over. If you find one of those, give them a smile today. That's what I'm talking about. Give time. Give your time to somebody who needs it. Give what's inside of you. That's the blessing that you can do. That's the activation step. I is for initiate. Go out now. Go out. Make a plan. If your vision is to get out of debt, make a plan to get out of debt. If your vision is to have a better relationship with your kids, call your kids. Call them on the telephone today, not tomorrow, today. And just say, you know what, we're so funny. We get so hooked up into these images, these masks that we have. I'm the parent and they did something wrong. No, just call them up and say, you know what, I love you so much. I love you so much. And I don't know what's going on with us, and I don't really even care what happened. You don't have to say anything. You can hang up now. I just want you to know that I love you so much. And see what begins to happen in your life. Activate. The next one is nuts. The last one is nuts. In order for us to feel the sustaining love of God, in order for us to be lifted up and guided into our next step, you have to go nuts. See, here's what nuts is. Never underestimate Spirit. That's what nuts is. Never underestimate Spirit. See, Joseph, the boy of many colors, he went nuts. He was thrown into a ditch by his own brothers who then he got to be a slave as a result of that experience. But he went nuts. He never underestimated spirit. Daniel got thrown into the lions. He went nuts. He never underestimated spirit. Martin Luther King, he went nuts. He knew that there was an opportunity to at least speak the beginnings of dignity for all human beings. He went nuts. Harvey Milk went nuts. He said gay people can walk as tall as straight people. He went nuts. See, we have to go nuts in our life. We have to go nuts in our life, and we can do that. And when we do, I promise you, you will feel the benefit. You will feel the benefit of the 55th Psalm, and particularly of line 22. It is unto you, O Lord, that I give my worries, and I have a better life. Let's take this message into prayer, knowing that there's only one power. It's the power of love. That power that runs through us all the time, all the time, all the time. So I simply speak my word that I'm going to consciously not gum up the love. It's just going to keep going through me, keep going through me, keep going through me, keep going through me. I want to just express it. Just express it. Harmony and joy and peace. I give thanks for this church. I give thanks for the Board of Trustees for creating an atmosphere in which we can gather and love and pray and laugh and cry and learn. I want to give thanks for Billy for stepping in and doing such a powerful job on sound today. Yeah. I want to give thanks for all of our ushers and all of our junior church. It's just everybody who puts this together. So many people. I give thanks. I release this word into law, and together we say, so.